You did everything right. You built the expertise. You logged the hours. You absorbed the projects nobody else wanted to touch. You made yourself so embedded in the work that the idea of things running without you felt almost absurd. And then the org chart changed anyway. If you're sitting with that right now, or you have sat with it before, this video is for you because there's something specific happening when mastery does not protect you. And almost nobody is naming what it actually feels like from the inside. Welcome to SoulFire Leadership, where we talk about what it actually feels like to lead at a senior level. The parts you're navigating alone, probably because nobody in your environment is naming them. I'm Amanda L. Christian. I spent over 33 years leading inside finance and technology. I led global teams, built and moved data centers, co-wrote the disaster recovery plan for technology, and actually had to execute it twice, 9/11 and Hurricane Floyd. At one point, I had almost 100 direct reports. I'm the author of my upcoming book, The SoulFire Leadership, the leadership model women were never taught. The link is in the description below. I coach high-achieving senior leaders in finance and technology. Let's dive in, shall we? So in 2010, I was laid off as a residual effect of the financial crisis and a merger. Unlike most people in that situation, I was not surprised, and I was not devastated to go. What stopped me cold was something my manager said when he delivered the news. I was the first person he had ever had to lay off. After all those years, all that seniority, he never had to do it. I, on the other hand, had laid off and terminated team members multiple of times across my career. I remember sitting there thinking, how did you get to your level and never have to do that? And then the real education began. I applied for jobs. I made it all the way to the top of the candidate pools. And then I got the call. We are not moving forward with this position. It has been cut from the budget. Over and over again. As my severance approached its end, the fear became specific, not abstract fear. The specific fear of how am I going to pay my bills and my mother's bills, whether I was going to lose the house I had worked so hard for, whether my son and I would be all right. And I knew in the back of my head and in my gut that everything would be fine. I would find a way. I eventually took a contract position with no remote option that required a 3-hour round-trip commute every day. And through it all, I kept coming back to something a leader had told me earlier in my career. Amanda, we are all apes. We are easily replaceable with another trained ape. In other words, you are a number, a cog, easily cut, no matter what you bring to the table. I did not want to believe that then. I believe that now, in the most useful way possible. Because once you stop expecting the machine to protect you, once you actually release that expectation, you start building something it cannot take. So tell me this. How long did you pretend to be fine before you let yourself admit that the ground had actually shifted? Because in my experience, the gap between when it happened and when you let yourself feel it is where a lot of the damage gets done. I want you to put your answer in the comments, not the polished version, the real one. What I just described has a name. I call it the mastery trap. The mastery trap is the moment you discover that excellence inside a system does not protect you when the system decides to restructure around you. Most high performers carry a version of the same belief, and almost none of us examine it out loud. The belief is, if I'm excellent enough inside the system will protect me. It feels like a logical trade. You give the organization your best years. your sharpest thinking, your willingness to absorb whatever gets dropped in your path. And in return, the organization holds a place for you. What nobody tells you, and what the whole performance management apparatus is actually built to obscure, is that competence is a contribution. It was never a contract. Your performance reviews were stellar. Your relationships were strong. Your institutional knowledge was the kind that takes years to rebuild. None of it was armor. The 2026 layoff wave is not taking aim at people who coasted. It is landing hardest on the people who performed, who were loyal, who had been inside the institution long enough to become load-bearing. AI automation is eliminating the analyst, coordinator, and program and project management roles that a lot of senior leaders spent their early careers building credibility inside. Not because those people failed, because the structure changed. You did not lose a role because you were not good enough. You lost a role because the machine reconfigured itself. Those are not the same thing, but they can feel identical from the inside. I want to name something that almost nobody names in the career transition conversation. I have worked with many leaders through this, and I've been through it myself more than once. And what I can tell you is that the professional loss is one thing. The demoralizing part is something else entirely. Because here's the question that kept coming up for me and for the leaders I have worked with. The question is, I put my heart and soul into this. I gave it everything I had. I was always exceeding expectations. Every annual review said so. So what did I do wrong? It was not me, and it's not you. That is not a comforting answer when you're inside it. Because if it was not me, then the thing I thought would protect me would never actually could or would. And that means the organizing logic I had been operating under for years was not the whole picture. That is a specific form of grief, and it deserves more than a pivot framework. What I see most often is the impulse to skip this part entirely, go straight to action. Update the resume, open LinkedIn, announce that you've been laid off and you're looking for a job. Start the network conversations. And all of that has its place. But the leaders who navigate this most effectively are almost never the ones who move the fastest. They are the ones who took an honest accounting of what actually happened before they started making the next move. Not to dwell, to recalibrate. Because what you build next should be built on what you actually know, not on a revised version of assumptions that left you exposed. Here's what I know after 33 years inside these institutions. A layoff, a reorg, a role elimination cannot touch what you actually have. Your title is gone. Your org chart position is gone. Your access badge is gone. And your judgment is intact. Your ability to read a room, anticipate meeting outcomes, manage through ambiguity, and build trust across cultures and time zones. That is yours. It existed before this role. It will exist after it. When I was laid off, one of the first things I did was a comprehensive review. Not of my resume, of myself. I wrote down everything I had learned across those years, the capabilities I had built, the moments where I genuinely delivered, where I had won, where I had solved something nobody else could solve. I made myself look at the full picture of what I actually had in my toolbox, independent of any title or reporting line. And then I wrote down the names of the people who had seen me do that work. Not my title, not my function, me, doing the work I was actually good at. The people who knew what I was capable of because they had watched me be capable of it. Those two lists together what I had built, and who had witnessed it. That was my actual professional equity. Not my business card, not my former org chart positions. That. Before you send a single email or update a single profile, give yourself 1 day. Not to process, not to grieve, just to let the dust settle before you start making decisions from inside the shock. Then do that review. Write down what you have built, where you have delivered, what you know how to do that most people in your space cannot do. And write down the names of the people who have seen it and experienced it firsthand. You don't need to contact them yet. You don't need a plan. You just need to see that list before the noise starts. Because that list is the most accurate picture of what you actually have and what you actually bring to the table. Everything else is scaffolding. I want to leave you with a reframe because the way you hold this moment will determine everything about how you move through it. This is not a fall. It's not a failure. It is an exit from a system that was never fully designed with you in mind. You were operating inside a structure that required more from you and gave you less margin. You succeeded anyway. And now the structure has been restructured, which means you are no longer inside a system that was costing you more than it was paying out. That is not a comforting thought on day 3 or day 500. I know that. But it is a true one. The leaders who came out of previous disruptions and emerged leading on their own terms did not do it by finding a better version of the same system. They did it by getting clear on what they actually had, what they actually wanted, and what kind of leadership they wanted to practice when they were not performing competence for an audience that kept moving the goalpost. The trap door is not the worst thing that ever happened to you. It might be the door you have been looking for. If this landed for you, please subscribe. If you know of someone else that could use this, please share. I post every week on what it actually feels like to lead at a senior level. The internal experience, not the performance of it. The parts that rarely get named. And drop your answer in the comments to this question. How long did you perform being fine? If you're in the middle of this right now, a layoff, a reorg, or that specific dread of watching colleagues lose roles while yours feels uncertain, this is exactly the moment a strategy conversation is most useful, before the decision is made for you. I offer a private coaching strategy call. We take a clear look at where you stand, what you actually have, and what your next move looks like on your terms. The link is in the description.